Hopefully the sale is still going on at Blick as I go ahead and do a review on their Copic alternative. So welcome back, you guys. This is Cetriya, Cetriya, and as you recall in my previous video of my Blick art supplies haul, I pulled out a couple of their markers and I went ahead and took them out of the box, check out the colors. Now these were only two simple 12 pack sets, and because of that, most of the colors were quite basic and don't have the full range, but for the sake of reviewing, this should not be an issue. Let me go ahead and show you guys the color key that I had created. As you can see here, these are, again, they were 2 packs of 12 of different ones, and for the 12 they were both about $15 each, and of course they cover the basic range of colors: black, brown, a couple of reds, purples, and greens, blues. One of the pack randomly had a very pale light skin color, but other than that, these are the basic colors for both of those 12 sets. One of them was on clearance, which was these guys, and I could see why, as I feel like the colors for the clearance was quite pale and a bit dusty, but other than that, I think so far the colors are quite vibrant. I went ahead and ordered 3 separate purples because in my other marker review, where we have the not the ohuhu, but the shuttle art markers that are like the ohuhu, they don't really have much of the purple, so I went ahead and ordered some of these. So again, what is the main feature about these markers is the fact that there are brush tip, and when you order them, they're roughly on sale anyways. They're roughly $2.50 or $2 in general. And I think with Copics, you could maybe, if you buy the 75 pack with like a lot of coupons, you can get it down to about $3 a marker. And there is a possibility that I could probably purchase Copic markers and go ahead and, not the markers, but the inks, and go ahead and refill the bodies. I don't see anyone doing that. I'll probably look that up and maybe buy a couple of Copic marker inks. Anyhow, the first thing I will say is that I very much like this body. Unlike the shuttle art markers, it's a very distinct place where you pull and grab. It's very easy to put the caps back in, and personally for me, there's a very distinct area as to the broad tip and the brush tip. I know someone had mentioned that on in my other video, that you can tell between the fine tip and the broad tip by the color, and on these guys it seems to be that there's a little bit of a gap on this area that tells you that it's the broad tip. But other than that, I would say I much prefer this body. This is the more current body that they have. The clearance markers that I bought from Blick, they have a very round cylinder kind of body, and then they have these little tabs right here. But for the most part, I'm not going to talk too much about this guy because there must be a reason why they discontinued this. And on this one, you can see there's like a little gray that tells you this is the broad tip, and I must not be the only person that find it a little bit off-putting that they make the distinction that way. So now they've changed it, and now they have this body, and I much prefer the grip on this body. So for this guy, I decided to do an illustration, and I used it with my Tombow brush pens and my Superior needlepoint line drawing pen. These guys do pretty well. They don't bleed that much, so we'll check to see if the markers bleed or not. Now, because I have a very limited range, I'm going to just go ahead and color perhaps the body of them. Let me go ahead and pick out some colors here. So I'm definitely going to pick out these 2 browns, and perhaps my nice lavender right here. And I think after that, I probably will have to go and use the skin tone color, and then I probably will have to go and pick other colors. But for now, let's get started with this. I know for most marker tutorials, they do say that you should saturate your paper, and I'm kind of off and on with that kind of thing. I personally like to start with like the mid-tones and color in the shading, but for this purpose I think I'm going to go ahead and try it out to see if it works by putting in the marker. As I said, this color is pretty light, so I'm just doing this for the sake of filling out the colors. So far the colors are just going into the paper nice and smooth and clean. Let's test out the tips. Okay, right off the bat I can tell that the tips are much harder than the Copic tips. However, they're not as hard as, say, Prismacolor tips, brush tips. So it does the thing, but it doesn't, how should I say, it doesn't, I have to press pretty hard in order to get it to, so you can tell I'm pressing really hard. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit better. I am putting a lot of pressure, and you can see it still hasn't bent. It's just resisting. So I would say this is more like a slightly softer bullet nib than an actual brush tip, but I am okay with it. I can definitely use a lot of areas. To be honest, a lot of times when I'm using Copic markers, I actually don't like just how soft the brush tips are, so I end up using the broad tip anyways. But with very light pressure, I think you could definitely get a difference. Yeah. With the Copics versus, yeah, there's definitely a difference in terms of the pressure that you have to put on. Now this is their older shaft. Let's see what happens, how it feels with their more newer build. Yep, I think with the newer build they definitely have improved it. So the feel for the newer build is on par with Copics. I'll go ahead and show you real quick. I noticed that with Copics, a lot of times it gives you that initial kind of like dab of the pigment, and then it kind of blends out. And I would definitely say for these guys, the Blick sketch ones, the new shaft definitely does exactly the same. Their older one does not, and for me personally, I like the older one doing that only because I do find that it is kind of getting annoying. Like I have to put in extra ink to make sure that the ink saturates the paper evenly. So now I'm gonna go ahead and color this out, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about my feelings on this. So I just checked the Blick website, and it seems that they have a max of 96 colors in their marker range, and these colors are quite nice. However, there is a number of, well, personally I prefer to go more pastel with the colors, so I'm probably gonna have to go in there and do a bit of adjustments with some color pencils. But other than that, I would say that the new bodies that they have, these versus the round bodies have a much harder nib, and rightly so. They put those on clearance. I don't know if they still have them anymore, but these guys are, well, pretty much are Copic comparable. I will say that at this point, as I just checked, at this point they do not have these guys on sale anymore, so you cannot buy the individual markers at $2 a piece anymore. They're $3. However, you can still get the 96 set of markers for $200, and most of their set markers are on sale. If you want to just get the $12 set, the 12 marker set, those are still going for $15 at the time of me uploading this list. So hopefully you guys see this and you guys grab it as quick as you possibly can. So for now, I'm just gonna go ahead and finish out this illustration, and with that, I'm going to mix in some of my other markers just so I can have a better range of colors. Well, now for the most part, I've gotten most of the illustration done. I just need to put in some final touches, but I will say that I do miss working in markers, and also that there are quite a bit of limitations that I need to learn how to deal with. But I will say that in general, I feel that the Blick Studio markers are definitely an awesome deal if you're a beginner. I think for 97 markers for $100 with an actual brush tip, and it's a soft, nice nib brush tip, is definitely a steal. I will say that if you do get a smaller pack, you will run into color limitations. However, I will add that this old marker brand that I believe is now owned by Winsor Newton, you can see I've used this up. This is a 10-year-old marker, and they still, for the most part, have ink. Some of the more used one, like the skin tones, are not, are kind of dry now, but there's a definite difference between using these and using the Copics that I have. And of course the Studio Blick markers. And I would say that, of course, you get what you pay for. I do feel that the Blick Studios inks probably will eventually run out. Like, I kind of feel that it's not soaking, it's not just dropping onto the paper. Copics do feel like they have a lot more ink in their body, but nothing beats the old Letraset. But it's almost a no point talking about them and how much I love these markers because they kind of bleed out, and oftentimes people will say my artwork looks like watercolor. And if you notice, the Letraset markers don't have a brush tip, and I've just gotten so used to working with a chisel nib at this point. I will say that once you start out making illustrations, especially if you're a beginner, don't spend too much money on trying to get Copics on your first time go around, because they are expensive, and if you're not making finished illustration or getting used to how to deal with markers, that you would be, it just be wasting your money because you're learning the basics. So if you're starting out and you don't mind spending about $200, the Blick Studio markers are definitely an awesome buy. If, however, you're very, very new to not just using markers, but also maybe in general doing some sort of traditional illustration, then go ahead and get one of the more cheaper markers that has been put on the market so far. Again, you can get a pack of ohuhu or shuttle markers, a pack of, I believe, like 80 or 88 for anywhere from $38 to $45. And if you're a very, very beginner, this will do. They do not blend edges. Like, I've tried it out now on the same paper for all of them, and I will say that they kind of sort of blend. Not a lot, but they'll do enough if you want to make some pretty color illustration just to get used to them. And then after that, I would probably, if you've used them a lot and you feel like your drawing chops is pretty good, then go ahead and jump into a more expensive brand, such as, I believe, Winsor Newton took over now. Winsor Newton or Copics, just go ahead and get into that, because if you're making high quality illustration, there's definitely a difference between the ink flow, the ink bleed, how the paper takes up the colors. And not only that, with Copics, I believe there's like 300 plus colors. At the time of purchase, when I purchased the Pantone, these were almost 300 plus colors, also because they used to be part of the old Pantone color system, and Pantone makes a lot of colors. But if you still feel like you're a hobbyist, you draw well, but you're still a hobbyist, you don't feel like dropping $400 for markers, then by all means, go ahead and get the Blick Studio Markers. They have a beautiful brush tip if you really are wanting brush tip. Again, I used to not working with brush tips, so I personally don't need them for my color illustrations. But then again, markers aren't like my 100% focus, even though I do miss working in them. But I think these are definite awesome intermediary type of markers. I just really wish they had more of the softer color range, but all in all, this is a good set. I'll probably purchase the pack of 96 on my own later this year, since I do have a couple of markers that I do need to fill in, just to fill things in. But I think these are good, like in between shuttle markers and then like the Copic markers. So I hope this was informative to you guys, and let me know in the comments if you have any other questions, or if you have any other suggestions you want me to use with the demo. Again, this is my first time using these markers, so if you want something specific, let me know. Otherwise, hope this was of interest to you. Hopefully they still have the sale by the time you get to see this video, if they even have the markers anymore. But all in all, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.